Hello. So today for our descriptive video assignment, I'm going to be talking about two concepts in semiotics that we have learned thus far this semester, and those are Saucer's dyad and connotations and denotations. And the reason I chose these two concepts is because after reading our text and what we've read so far, I kind of realized that these two concepts are almost synonymous and they go hand in hand to some extent. So basically, Saucer determined that every linguistic sign is a dyad and is a two-sided entity. And in that two-sided entity, there's a signified, which is the mental concept or nuances, feelings evoked by a sign or a symbol or an object, and the signifier, which is the actual physical representation of the object or sign. And what I realized is that signified is very similar to connotations. Connotations are also, the mental aspects associated with physical objects, while denotations are very similar to the signifier, which is, the actual meaning and purpose of an object. So I found that was pretty interesting, and I decided in my observation to really address the similarities between the two. And for the sake of this assignment, I kind of pictured myself being dropped in this area with no sort of previous recollection of where I was, as if I teleported to this area and I had no idea where I was, and I tried to put myself in that perspective and see how, if I was in that situation, how I would observe what is around me and use the connotations and denotations of the signified objects and actually determine where I was and what was going on in this environment. So I sat down in the hub, kind of in the back corner near the computer cluster, near the mail room, and I noticed about 5 things that I want to address very briefly in regard to connotations, denotations, signified, signifier, and what they represent in that regard. So the first thing I really noticed was there was a sign on the second floor, which was visible from where I was sitting, that said the courtroom. And on this sign, there were 2 athletes above the letters the courtroom, and there was a basketball and a volleyball for the O's in courtroom, or actually just room. And initially you see these athletes and these balls, and you automatically assume that this sign represents something that has to do with athletics. The mental connotations associated with these symbols lead us to believe that this would be some sort of gym or athletic complex. So hypothetically, if I had no idea where I had no idea that the courtroom was, our basketball courts here, our public basketball courts, I would assume that this is some sort of gym or athletic complex. So those connotations led me to believe the denotations. So the connotations of the signified led me to believe the denotations of the signifier, what this actually represents. And the next thing I looked at was the fireplace. And, what are some of the connotations of a fireplace? Warmth, winter, wood, smoke, many other things along this line. And, in this hypothetical situation, say I was just dropped in this environment and I had no idea where I was. I would assume that I was somewhere cold. There's no fireplaces down south in Florida for the most part. I would assume that I was somewhere north, somewhere cold, somewhere where this signifier would lead me to believe that we were somewhere cold. Yeah, and then I observed a vending machine, and some of the connotations associated with that: nourishment, brands, capitalism, money, refreshment. Um, these mental concepts of a vending machine lead me to believe what it actually represents, the denotations, and that's, the ability to get a drink, the ability to spend money to get a drink. Just by observing this, I can understand what it represents and its purpose. Two other things I want to mention briefly: there were various posters around this environment. And, what do posters represent? What are the connotations associated with the signified object of a poster? Connotations include events, involvement, where, when, how, what, stuff like that. And that leads me to believe that this physical object represents these connotations: events, involvement, things along those lines. And the last thing I want to address is the people that I noticed around me. Again, in this hypothetical situation, I don't know where I am, but I can assume that I'm probably at a college because everyone around me is on a laptop. It seems that everyone around me is doing work. If I had no idea where I was, it would feel like I was at a college or a university of some sort of learning environment based on what I noticed these people doing. And, so the connotations associated with what these people are doing lead me to believe, I'm at a university, lead me to believe the actual denotations of where I reside. And another thing I want to mention regarding the people is the fact that many of these people have coats and jackets, long sleeve shirts, rain boots. Some of them have rain boots on. So this leads me to believe that I'm in a cold environment and I am in a maybe wet environment based off the rain boots and the rain jackets. These connotations of the, signified object of the signifier lead me to believe all these assumptions about where I am and the external environment. So it's just really interesting. It was really interesting for me to put myself in the perspective of, I have no idea where I am. I'm looking around. What sort of connotations of signified objects could I assume represent about these actual physical objects around me? And, this all goes back to Saussur's dyad, the fact that, every linguistic sign is a two-sided entity, and these entities can't be separated. Signified and the signifier go hand in hand, just like connotations and denotations go hand in hand. And that is my descriptive video assignment. Thank you very much.